Hello, I'm Joe Brandstetter, Director of Administrative Services for the City of Shoreline. This presentation is to help Shoreline Pool Advisory Committee members prepare for the fourth Pool Committee meeting on Tuesday, October 28th. This builds on the September 30th City Funding 101 Part A presentation, where I talked about how the city makes a budget and shared highlights about operating and capital expenses. Our goal in this presentation is to help committee members understand the way the city generates revenue and how property taxes work in the state of Washington. The state of Washington property tax structure is very complex and can be hard to understand. You don't need to be an expert, but we hope this video will provide you some basics. If you're confused about any portion of the presentation, I encourage you to press pause, rewind, and watch again in case that helps. Staff will be ready to answer your questions about the presentation at the meeting on October 28th, so please write them down. If you are able to email your questions to Hillary ahead of time, that is helpful, but certainly not necessary. Let's dive in. This slide was shared with you at the second Pool Committee meeting in the City Funding 101 discussion. It's a reminder of our city's operating budget and where funds are allocated. Remember that all operating dollars are already committed to existing services. Adding something like a pool means either finding a new revenue source or reallocating funds from a different service. This would mean cutting that service. Council makes these decisions based on budget policies, maintaining services, and ensuring that new programs have sustainable funding. There are always a variety of economic factors at play, usually driving up the cost to run the city and provide services to our residents. Public safety is the top priority and the largest portion of our budget. Residents have consistently affirmed this in satisfaction surveys. So, where does the money for the operating budget come from? Our general fund is used to pay for the majority of city operations. Here is a listing of funding sources, which is made up mostly of state and local taxes. Property tax and sales tax make up over 60% of all revenue for the operating budget. Now we are going to watch a brief video put together by the City of Kirkland that explains how property tax levies work in the state of Washington and how property tax bills are collected.
Washington State has a property tax system that's very different than most other states. Here in the Evergreen State, we have what's known as a budget-based property tax system and not a rate-based system. This unique system results in complexities that often result in misconceptions. The most common misconception being that when property values go up, taxes go up as well, and the city government gets more money. In this video, we're going to clear up some of this confusion by covering the basics of this system. To start, we need to define what's known as the property tax levy. While Don McLean may describe a levy as a place to drive your Chevy, governments define a levy as the total amount of money to be collected from the taxpayers. By Washington state law, our property tax levy has very strict limitations on how it can be increased. The property tax levy can increase if there is tax revenue generated by new construction, it can grow if voters approve a levy lid lift, and it can grow by 1% every year. We're going to set aside new growth and voted changes and explain the system under the 1% growth limit. Let's imagine a city levies their highest lawful amount of $30 million in property taxes. The 1% limit means that it can only levy $30,300,000 the next year, regardless of any existing property value changes. This means that even if property values increase, the city government can only gain 1% more revenue each year. In many states, if the assessed value goes up by 10%, the tax rate goes up by 10% as well. But in Washington, the taxpayer contribution towards a levy is determined by taking individual property value changes and comparing those changes to the value of the entire district. To find out how much each person will need to contribute toward a levy, a county assessor takes the levy and divides it by the assessed value of all the property within the jurisdiction to calculate a value. This value is called the tax rate, and by law, it's expressed as a dollar rate per $1,000. The tax rate is used to calculate an individual's tax bill. Property value and quantity often changes from year to year in a region, so to find the tax bill, a property owner takes that year's tax rate and multiplies that rate by every $1,000 of their own property value. For example, A rate of 0.96 means that a house worth $500,000 pays $481.32 in tax. In Washington, the way your taxes are calculated is not only based on the value of your individual property, but also how much your property changes compared to the rest of the district. In this video, we're going to use an imaginary scenario to answer questions like why the city government doesn't get more money even when property values go up for everyone, and why increasing property values don't always mean higher property taxes. For this example, we'll use 3 properties that were all valued equally last year and one that is valued much higher than the others. This year, the district value went up by 5% and all the houses' values increased as well. House A increased by 3%, House B increased by 5%, House C increased by 10%, and the high-value house went up by 3%. These assessed value changes impact how much property tax each house pays. House C's value went up the most, so they'll be paying more than last year. House B went up exactly as much as the district average, so they only pay 1% more. And the high-value house and House A only went up by 3%, so both will be paying less than last year's property tax. The high-value house will still be paying more money in property taxes than the other houses because the property is worth more. But since the house's values increased less than the district average, it pays less than it did last year in property taxes. Now let's take a look at how this example plays out as another year goes by. We'll say that the assessed value goes up by 10%, the levy grows by 1% of last year, and all the house's values increase. Because of the property tax formula, the tax rate actually goes down to 0.88, and all the house's tax payments change accordingly. Property tax is calculated by using both the value of the property and the change compared to the other properties. This means that even if your property has only ever increased in value, you won't automatically be paying more in taxes, because other people may have had a larger value increase and would pay more towards the levy to keep things balanced. Now remember, the system of balancing is also all under the 1% levy limit, which means, even with property values increasing for everyone, the government can't grow the amount of taxes to be collected by any more than 1% per year. This 1% limit is why we rely on new construction and voted changes to generate revenue. To review, the government is authorized to collect a certain amount of tax dollars, a county appraiser sets the value of property in the district, the property values of the district determine the portion of taxes everybody pays, the residents get statements proportionate to their assessed value, taxes get collected, and the money is used to pay for things like parks, police, and the fire department. Now that we've covered these parts, here are a few of the things that affect the system as a whole. These things are important, but without the basics covered, things can get complex fast. For more information on the total property tax process, including the things listed here, we've included a few resources in the video description that will show a detailed view of how the system works so you can stay informed. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you for being part of our community.
The state of Washington has a unique and complex property tax system. The video you just saw provides a helpful overview. It may be worth watching more than once to get a better understanding of how the system works. This slide illustrates property tax changes for a median assessed home in Shoreline comparing 2024 to 2025. Property taxes are influenced by a variety of factors including assessed value, the levy rate, and other measures. In Shoreline, from 2024 to 2025, these were the changes for a median valued home. Assessed value increased from $656,000 to $750,000. The tax rate decreased from $10.94 to $10.14 per $1,000 assessed. The average tax bill increased from $7,177 to $7,606. This slide shows the city of Shoreline is only a small portion of your total property tax bill. Property taxes fund many important state and community programs, not just the city. This includes King County services, regional transportation programs such as Sound Transit, schools, and libraries, just to name a few. From the property tax paid information on the prior slide, Shoreline receives about 17% of tax paid. In that example, Shoreline receives $1,293 of the $7,606 total property tax bill. The next largest revenue source is sales tax at 22%. Sales tax is the city's second largest funding source. For every $1 of sales tax paid, the City of Shoreline receives 12 cents. Of that amount, 2 cents are dedicated to the Transportation Benefit District, which can only be used for sidewalk construction projects. The remaining portion supports the citywide operations budget discussed earlier. The city is largely limited in its ability to increase sales tax rates under state law. An increase in sales tax revenues would not be sufficient to fully fund the construction of or ongoing operations needed at a new pool. As we just showed, about 60% of city revenues come from sales tax and property tax. The City of Shoreline does have other revenues, but they are often restricted or dedicated to specific uses. This means they could not be used for a pool. Park and recreation revenues could help fund pool operations, but not construction or major capital costs. The city takes a holistic, long-term view of its budget, looking at revenues, expenditures, and trends together over time. These images are illustrative examples of our financial forecast. We evaluate a range of factors and multiple scenarios to ensure sound, sustainable financial decisions. Any ongoing addition to our budget is included to ensure we can continue to provide a high level of service in the future. Our 10-year and beyond outlook shows we currently don't have the capacity to fund a large capital project such as a new pool without a new revenue source. Thank you for watching this presentation on City Funding 101, Part B. Our goal in this presentation was to help committee members understand the way the city generates revenue and how property taxes work in Washington State. You heard about property tax levies and how the levy and assessed value are used to calculate a property tax rate. You also briefly heard about the city funding sources that are generally not available for a pool facility, with the exception of parks and recreation fee revenue that would be generated at a new pool. We imagine that you may have questions after hearing this presentation. Staff will be ready to answer your questions at our meeting on October 28th, so please write them down. If you are able to email your questions to Hillary ahead of time, this is helpful, but not necessary. Thank you again. We look forward to seeing you soon.